So if you're yet to consider a wireless gaming mouse, then you definitely should, because wireless gaming mice are getting really good. The days of click latency between wired and wireless are truly over and have been for quite a while, and you really don't need to pay a whole lot these days to get a really decent wireless mouse. This list is for those of you who mostly play first-person shooters and are looking to make the jump to wireless, but are not sure which are the best options out there. So as someone who has tried a ton of different gaming mice, these are my top 5 when it comes to wireless. Now before we dive into the top 5 list, I want to get a really important question out of the way first, and that's why even go with a wireless mouse in the first place? Will it even be a noticeable upgrade for you? And I think the simplest answer for this is that the lower sensitivity that you play on, the more noticeable the upgrade to wireless will be, and the more you can appreciate that wireless sensor. For example, I personally play at 800 DPI with a 0.29 sensitivity in Valorant and 1.3 cents in Apex. That means I mostly aim with my arm and frequently do those big swipes. If on the other hand you're mostly a wrist aimer with a higher sensitivity, which there's nothing wrong with, some of the best players in the world play like that as well, but the upgrade to wireless probably isn't going to be that noticeable for you. I'll also note that this top 5 list is, I guess, my current ranking of what I use for my hand size and grip preference, but I'll also mention how this list could change due to different grip styles. So for me, I use a fairly conventional claw grip, although with my pinky and ring finger are fairly relaxed, and my hands I'd say are just slightly bigger than average. So kicking things off with the top ranked mouse on this list, and it's probably no surprise to most of you who watch some of my older content or my streams even, and it is the Logitech G Pro X Superlight, which I've been using for about 4 months ever since it first launched. And honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of the original G Pro wireless. I found it to be a bit too large and kind of oval shaped, but it's really weird how just the reduction in weight from 80 to 60 grams can totally change the way that the mouse feels in the hand, even aside from the weight itself. Somehow, this feels a bit smaller and more tolerable than the original G Pro wireless, and it's much easier to control and throw around, despite it having the exact same shell. So the real kicker here is having that wireless feel without any honeycomb cutouts at just 60 grams in what I'd regard as a very neutral shaped mouse. In fact, if there was just a single mouse shape out there that could satisfy the largest group of users with different hand sizes and grip styles, I think this would easily be it. But it's not perfect, and actually I'd say that the buttons are a slight step back from the original G Pro wireless in my opinion, and I'll also mention that my scroll wheel has also started to make some pretty janky noise after 4 months. Also regarding the pads, I haven't really felt the need to upgrade to aftermarket pads on these ones. They do break in really well after a couple of weeks of proper use, so if you find that they're a little bit rough or scratchy out of the box, they do get much better over time. Now I see a lot of people hung up about the Superlight not being USB Type-C. It is just micro USB connection, but I don't know if I'm missing something here. I personally couldn't care less. In fact, Logitech could have made the jankiest, most proprietary connector on the Superlight, and I would still use it as my main. I think it's that good. Now, number 2 on this list is probably going to surprise a lot of you, especially for those of you who are not familiar with the company name, but it is the Pwnage Ultra Custom Symmetrical. I reviewed this mouse about a month ago, and I called it the kind of most underrated gaming mouse that no one is using, and I still stand by that 100%. In fact, so many of you have come to me since that video mentioning that you picked it up and that you were super happy with your purchase, so that's really great to see. And if I'm totally honest, if the G Pro X Superlight didn't exist, I would happily use this as my main mouse. The big deal here is that you're getting one of the best mouse shapes on the market in my opinion, the Zowie S2, but it's wireless, has a better scroll wheel, a lightweight design, all at a pretty affordable price of $80 US. Probably the biggest downside of this mouse though is the higher than normal lift-off distance of the sensor. So if you make a lot of small adjustments and lift-offs with your wrist, especially if you play on a high sensitivity, this probably isn't the mouse for you. Personally, I don't find the lift-off distance to be an issue, just like I didn't on the Razer Viper Mini, which is pretty similar in that regard, but it's definitely worth noting. Another downside here is the software, which is fine, it works, it's just not that visually appealing. It really doesn't matter too much. I would just really appreciate if they clean this up to match the quality of the product itself. but there's just something about this shape that feels so comfortable to use. The big hump at the back, the low main mouse buttons, the taper in the middle, it's just super comfortable, and a lot of people seem to agree. And then a final note here, if you are planning on picking this up, I would definitely recommend the version with the solid side grips, not the honeycomb sides. It feels much better tapered and a lot more comfortable to use. Then at number 3 on the list is probably going to be a surprise as well, because this mouse released back in 2018, and I think I'm only realizing now how far ahead of its time it actually was, and it is of course the Logitech G305. Even by today's standards, I consider this one of the best wireless gaming mice that you can currently buy. In fact, if you are just getting into PC gaming, maybe you're making the switch from console and you want a decent wireless mouse as a starting point, the G305 is a seriously good option, and there's two main reasons for that, apart from the good shape and the decent buttons. First is the price. This thing is just $49 US, which in terms of a wireless gaming mouse is an absolute steal. Secondly is the battery life. With a AAA lithium battery in the G305, you can easily get around 3 months of battery life playing every single day on a single battery, which is really insane. At the same time, that AAA battery will get the weight down to around 80 grams, which most would consider light enough for a gaming mouse, and the smaller shape does make this thing really easy to throw around. One thing I would recommend for the G305 though would be some adhesive grips or skins on the side and the main buttons. The stock coating isn't as grippy as some of the other options on this list. Overall though, this is absolutely a killer gaming mouse for the money. Really can't go wrong with the G305. Number 4 on this list is a mouse that I haven't actually reviewed yet, so I guess you'll hear my fresh thoughts on it here, but it is the SteelSeries Aerox 3. Personally, I really like the shape here, nice taper in the side, nice grooves in the buttons, really claw grip friendly mouse, but there are a couple of reasons here that it's ranked number 4 and not say 2 or 3. Firstly, the side buttons, which are almost inset into the shell of the mouse. Like, what is going on here? Seriously, these things feel so small, and at first they are really difficult to use. I have no doubt that over time you could get used to them, but for me they just feel way too small. Secondly are the mouse feet. Now, I don't have much game time on the Aerox 3, but these don't feel anywhere near as smooth as the other mice on this list. So if you are planning on picking up the Aerox 3, I'd highly recommend some thicker aftermarket glides as well. Some other good points here though, the main mouse buttons actually feel pretty good. I'd say that these are pretty close to the Superlight, although just a tiny bit heavier, and the scroll wheel feels really solid as well. SteelSeries really nailed the shape here though. I'm a big fan of the aggressive side taper and how that just catches and supports the thumb really well. Overall, nothing to complain about here other than those side buttons and the mouse feet. But then at number 5, we have the glorious Model O Wireless, which made a huge bang when it first released, especially without the Logitech G Pro X Superlight and other mice on this list being released at the same time. But Glorious did a fantastic job here. $80 gets you a really good package. Personally, I just don't really like the shape for claw grip, but for fingertip users, you guys are going to love this. I do much prefer the shape of the Ponage Ultra Custom Symmetrical at the same price. I think the Model O just feels a bit too flat and long and just overall too big, but if you don't play claw and instead use fingertip grip, you might actually prefer the Model O Wireless. But apart from personal grip preference, I really can't fault this mouse. Sure, I do prefer a shell without honeycomb cutouts, but I'm willing to take that compromise here for a lighter mouse overall. Now, when the Model O Wireless first came out, it was really an insane deal, right? It just sounded too good to be true. $80 bought you the lightest wireless gaming mouse on the market. But since then, the Superlight has come out, then the Ponage Ultra Custom, which effectively offers similar specs in what I think is a better shape. And also a very similar option to the Model O Wireless is the Razer Viper Ultimate. These two have an almost identical shape, which is insane. So really this number 5 spot could go to either of these two. I do think the Model O Wireless has nicer buttons though, just a bit snappier overall, but then on the other hand, the Razer has a solid shell. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, depending on your hand size and grip preference, the order of these mice might be totally different for you. For example, if you use a fingertip grip, you might rank the Model O Wireless towards the top. If you have small hands, you might rank the G305 towards the top. Maybe the G Pro Wireless and other mice are a bit too big. Regardless, you really can't go wrong with these top 5 options. but do consider how your own hand size and grip style impacts what's going to be the best choice for you. And lastly, an honorable mention if you're after an ergonomic wireless mouse is the Pwnage Ultra Custom, not the symmetrical version, although for some reason they both share the same name. Really comfortable shape here if you're into ergo mice. I'm not personally, but I know a lot of people are, and it appears to use the same wireless system as the symmetrical. Not too much to say about this one because I haven't used it much at all, but it's been pretty well reviewed at this point and has a lot of positive reviews. So moving forward, I think wireless is going to be the kind of next big final step for gaming mice, especially when you have affordable 75-gram options like this that exist from very small companies. It's only a matter of time before wired mice kind of just fade into the past. So if you're looking to make the jump to wireless, definitely consider these top 5 options, can highly recommend them, and I will have them linked down below in the description. As always, a huge thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.